ma yurid. That nothing occurs except what he desires, except what he wishes. وَلَا يَكُونُ إِلَّا مَا يُرِيد. And so the Sheikh Salih Al-Fawzan, hafidhahullah, he says that in this statement we see the affirmation of two things. There are two things indicated in this statement. Number one, Al-Qadr, the affirmation of Al-Qadr. And number two, the affirmation of the attribute of Al-Irada for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Al-Irada, we can translate it as wish or desire. It's not, probably wish is probably the best word. Wish. And so these two things are indicated in the statement, وَلَا يَكُونُ إِلَّا مَا يُرِيد, that nothing occurs except what he wishes. And this means that nothing occurs in Allah's dominion, in His creation. No event takes place, nothing takes place except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has wished it. Allah has desired it. Allah has wanted it to be. And the proof for this is the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, in Surah Yasin, right at the very end, verse 82, Allah says, إِنَّمَا أَمْرُهُ إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْئًا أَن يَقُولَ لَهُ كُن فَيَكُونَ. That indeed his affair or his command is such that when he wishes something, when he desires something, that all he has to say is be, and it is. Be, and it is. So this means that every single goodness, everything which is khair, and everything which is evil, then all of it is through Allah's irada, through Allah's wish. And nothing comes out of Allah's wish. There is nothing that escapes or is independent of Allah's wish. And the Shaykh says that this statement here is a refutation of the Qadariyya. It is a refutation of the Qadariyya. And the Qadariyya are the ones who began to deny Al-Qadr. They began to claim that the servant, that each one of us, for example, that he creates his own actions outside of Allah's creative power and outside of Allah's wish. They said that man is the creator of his own actions. And the reason why they said this, to explain very quickly, is that they said that when a person commits an evil deed, when a person commits something which is evil, then how can Allah punish someone whom He forced to do an evil deed? Okay? And then they thought that this conflicts with the idea of justice. The idea of justice, the al-adl. And so therefore they said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that although He wills things and He gives men the capacity, it is men who themselves create their own actions. And it is only then that man can be punished for what he does, for the evil that he does. In other words, they had a wrong idea of what is justice, and with this wrong idea they then thought that man, he creates his own actions and only then can he be held responsible for that. And so this really was the foundation of the mistake of the Qadariyya. And we see that this innovation is not something which has disappeared. This is, rather we find it present in books today amongst the people or groups who claim to be involved in da'wah. So we see, for example, the founder of Hizb ut-Tahrir, he is Taqiyuddin al-Nabhani, that in his book Shakhsiyya Islamiyya, we find him outlining this very same innovation of the Qadariyya. One of the first four major innovations which occurred in the Ummah. The innovation of the Khawarij, the innovation of the Rafida, the innovation of the Qadariyya, and innovation of the Murjiyah. And the Qadariyya, the Messenger ﷺ, he spoke about them and he said that they are the Majus of this Ummah, the Majins of this Ummah. So anyway, this was the foundation upon which they spoke of this innovation. And what we say what we say, and in fact, the reality of this issue will become clear when we explain it in a bit more detail from the speech of Sheikh Salih al-Sheikh. But basically, we believe that every single thing which happens, whether it is man's evil deeds, whether it is man's good deeds, then all of it arises and occurs out of Allah's will and Allah's wish. And so one of the effects of this innovation is that it ascribes inability to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It ascribes the fact that there is something within Allah's creation that Allah does not have control or power over. And this is false and it is rejected. And it means that things occur within Allah's creation which He has not wished. And this, as we said, is removing from Allah His power and His control and His complete domination over His creation. And then the Shaykh explains as well that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He creates evil and when He creates good, in other words, when He brings about evil, when He brings about good, then all of that is for a wisdom. There is a wisdom behind everything that Allah wishes, everything which Allah wills. So, from the point of view, so for example, from the point of view of evil, as it relates to us, then something is evil as it relates to us. But as it relates to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Allah brings about evil, meaning in terms of His action, then His action, there is nothing but perfect wisdom and justice behind His action. To help you, to illustrate, to give an example, the example which is usually given is, let's say for example you have an illness or some sort of problem, and you go to the doctor, and the doctor requires that you need to be, surgery needs to be done, and you need to be cut, for example, let's say your chest needs to be opened, so he needs to cut open your chest, then you need to be given, whatever treatment. Now, this, as it relates to you as an individual, and the pain that you feel, and the harm that you feel, and the stress that you go through, all of this is no doubt evil to you. However, the action of the doctor, in the fact that the doctor is actually performing the action, this action, then in that there is a benefit, and there is a wisdom. So things can be looked at in two different ways. One in terms of the patient, and one in terms of the action of the doctor. And this example is usually the example given. This example is given by Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah. And so, to help us understand the idea that when it comes to things which take place in the creation, which we see to be evil, then they are evil as it relates to us. But as it relates to Allah's action of wishing that thing, and bringing that thing into existence and making the action to happen, then there is a wisdom behind that, and there is nothing but goodness as it relates to Allah's action that is behind that. But as it relates to the creation, then it is obviously evil as it relates to us. And we can apply this principle in many different ways. To give you one illustration, imagine a thief or a robber, for example. We find someone steals the property of other people, or maybe he harms other people, he oppresses them, he harms them in their wealth, or he harms them in their body and injures them. So now the fact that Allah wished and willed this to occur, then as it relates to Allah, we say that there is some wisdom behind these affairs that take place. Allah wished them, no doubt He wished them, and they took place. But there is some wisdom behind these affairs taking place. So as it relates to Allah, we don't say that this is an evil action. Rather, we say that there is some wisdom behind this by which Allah intends benefit for the majority or for the whole of mankind. But as it relates to us, we see that a man stealing is evil, or a man murdering somebody else is evil, and we can apply the same thing to all other types of evils and harms. But as it relates to Allah, then we see that from the wisdom in that is that Allah's hudud are established. So the thief is punished, the murderer is punished, and the idea of wisdom and justice, is found, and through which the rest of the people are protected. Right? So we see that even though something might be evil as it relates to us, as it relates to Allah, then there is perfect wisdom. We can apply the same thing to all of what we call the disasters which take place, like the earthquakes and the volcanoes and the tsunamis and so on and so forth. No doubt as it relates to us, these are evil in the sense that they bring about harm upon the people, and loss of life and loss of wealth and stress and anxiety. So as it relates to us, this is an evil which has occurred. But as it relates to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, within this action there is perfect wisdom and perfect justice and a far-reaching wisdom behind what He does and behind what he wishes. So the Shaykh says that everything in Allah's actions and in Allah's wish, in Allah's irada, whether it is something that is good or whether it is something that is perceived to be evil by us, then all of that has a far-reaching purpose and a far-reaching wisdom. And that wisdom is al-ibtila wal-imtihan. Al-ibtila wal-imtihan, which is to test the people. To test the people, to put them to trial, and to make tamyiz, to distinguish between the khabith and the tayyib. To distinguish between that which is vile and impure and that which is wholesome and pure. And likewise, in order to reward the people for their righteous actions and to punish the people for the evil actions. Meaning that these are some of the wisdoms and these are some of the purposes behind Allah wishing what we perceive to be evil amongst the creation. So all of this wisdom goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah has never created anything which is pointless or anything which has no purpose or has no, Allah hasn't created anything just for mere idle play. So this is how we understand this statement, or some of the meanings that arise from this statement. وَلَا يَكُونُ إِلَّا مَا يُرِيدُ, that nothing occurs except what He wishes, that everything comes under Allah's wish or under Allah's power, nothing escapes from it, and we are not confused by these doubts of the people like the Qadariyya, who denied that that mankind comes under Allah's will in terms of his actions, and who claimed that man creates his own actions, because they had this misconception that how can man be judged if unless he is completely independent to choose and do and act what he wishes outside of Allah's will and power. So they had a misunderstanding, as a result of which they made an error. And this is why Imam al-Tahawi, you can see here in the opening statements of his creed, you see that he's refuted the groups on the issue of Allah's names and attributes, وَلَا شَيْءَ مِثْلُهُ. We see that he's also refuted the people who claim that Allah's attributes have a beginning or Allah's attributes have an end. And likewise we see here Allah refuting we see when he speaks about Allah's attribute here of irada, we see that Imam al-Tahawi, he is refuting the Qadariyya who deny al-Qadar. And so this is the end of what has been said by Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh.